Most people know Joseph Stalin was the leader of the USSR during World War II. He and President Franklin D. Roosevelt actually had a strong relationship, even though they had conflicting political philosophies. Sadly, this one positive relationship was not enough to stop Stalin's plans to instill communism in the USSR. During his dictatorship, historians believe as many as 9 million people died due to his policies and government programs. Modern Russian history has been heavily influenced by its experiences with communism under leaders like Lenin and Joseph Stalin. In particular, Stalin left his mark on world history as part of the Allies in World War II, and then helped start the Cold War with the United States. He's remembered for his cruelty in the USSR as he attempted to force communism to work as the country deteriorated. But Stalin did not begin his political career as a dictator. Instead, Stalin had revolutionary leanings, wanting to make Russia a better country. Stalin slowly changed into the dictator he is well known for today. It is time to look into Stalin's history and career to examine how he became one of Russia's most famous dictators whose influence can still be felt today. How did Joseph Stalin become a dictator? Vladimir Lenin came to power during the October Revolution in 1917 and quickly became the dictator of Russia. He established the Decree on Land, which redistributed land to the peasants and changed the country to better conform with communist ideologies. The Bolsheviks' government disposed of all their significant threats by 1921. However, Lenin's reign was unstable as the country was torn apart by civil war and peasant revolts. As Lenin's government expanded and brought the communist revolution to other countries, they began to run into issues with different nationalities. The Bolsheviks opposed imperialism because they believed in communism. To solve this, they created the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the USSR. Each country ideally had cultural and moderate political autonomy. In reality, all critical decisions came from Moscow. The USSR began in 1922 mainly due to Joseph Stalin's work, who started his rise to power that same year. While Stalin had been involved in politics before 1922, his influence increased when Lenin appointed Stalin as the General Secretary of the Communist Party. He was in charge of party office appointments, but after Lenin's first stroke in 1922, Stalin was deputized for him. However, Lenin's stroke did not remove him from politics entirely, and he became increasingly uncomfortable with Stalin's coarse manners. Lenin wrote his testament during the winter of 1922, recommending the Bolshevik Party remove Stalin from his office and suggesting changes to the Russian government to prevent splitting the party after his death. Sadly, Lenin could never present his testament. He suffered a third stroke in the spring of 1923, leaving him unable to talk. He never recovered and died in January 1924, leaving the Bolshevik Party without a leader. Before his death, Lenin had hoped his followers would establish a collective leadership. Unfortunately, they soon became embroiled in a power struggle, and Stalin was not the group's most prominent member. That honor was held by Leon Trotsky, who helped Lenin throughout the revolution as his second-in-command. Other members of the Bolshevik Party were jealous of his popularity, namely Lev Kamenev and Grigory Zinoviev, who conspired with Stalin to push Trotsky out of the political arena. They protected Stalin when Lenin's testament was released to the public. But Stalin was more interested in power than loyalty. By 1926, he began shifting political alliances, arguing for socialism in one country, saying the USSR needed to fully establish communism before they can encourage other revolutions across the globe. Kamenev and Zinoviev soon fell out of political favor. By 1930, Stalin was unquestionably the Soviet Union's leader, but his political interference had earned him many enemies. So, in 1934, Stalin began arresting thousands of Bolshevik Party members for treason following Sergei Kirov's assassination. Kirov was Stalin's ally and the popular leader of the Communist Party in Leningrad. Historians don't know if Stalin ordered his death to justify the Great Terror. Still, even if he didn't, he used the event to eliminate anyone who threatened his power. Many high political leaders, like Kamenev and Zinoviev, suffered show trials before their execution. By the end of the 4 years, Stalin had unquestionably moved from a revolutionary with dreams to shape his country to a dictator, unafraid to use any force necessary to maintain his immense power. Stalin had not lost his revolutionist ideologies, though, and with his new grasp on the USSR, he began implementing drastic changes that still impact Russia today. What were Stalin's major policies and changes? Stalin began his significant policy changes in 1928 with the first of his 5-year plans to convert the USSR to full communism. The first 5-year plan included rapid industrialization and turning agriculture into a collective activity. Industrialization did happen quickly, growing by at least 15% per year and reportedly meeting Stalin's goals before the 5 years were over. The USSR started several industrial centers in the middle of Siberia, which drew a steady population to produce things like steel. While industrialization changed the Soviet Union's economy, some of the most significant changes came in agriculture. Russian peasants had farmed individual strips of land for centuries. Any excess produce had gone to the landowners when serfdom was in effect. After it ended, the peasants could sell their goods at the local markets. Some even made enough of a profit to purchase more strips of land from their neighbors, and they began using agricultural machinery to improve their harvests. The more prosperous peasants were known as the kulaks, and Stalin opposed them buying out their neighbors. He proposed using collectivization to mitigate the discrepancies caused by profit. Peasants would work together to fill quotas for the government on a larger farm, providing the food needed to continue industrialization. While this was supposed to be a voluntary process, the people were so opposed to it that the government had to force them onto collective farms. Although the idea did limit any benefits from profits, collective farms could not always meet quotas, especially during challenging harvests. A lousy harvest would lead to famine. The collective farms did not give the government enough food to carry the country through hard times. But starvation was not the only danger the people faced under Stalin's dictatorship. Stalin's Great Terror started with his political opponents, but soon branched out beyond the Communist Party. Stalin was also worried about a military coup, so he attacked senior army officers, executing them under false treason charges. Many of the officers came from aristocratic backgrounds. Stalin feared that they would abandon the Soviet Union if they had to fight against a capitalist country. He was also concerned about some of the officers using their considerable skill to overthrow his government, and the most famous officer Stalin killed during the Great Terror was Mikhail Tukhachevsky. As the most talented officer in the army, he modernized the military, ushering in mechanized warfare in the 1920s and 1930s. By 1935, Tukhachevsky was so popular with the people that Stalin decided to get rid of him, having him executed in 1937. The Great Terror could not have come at a more critical time in world history. International tensions rose throughout the 1930s as Adolf Hitler took over Germany and began plans to push into Eastern Europe. The Nazis and the USSR held opposing worldviews, but although war between the Soviet Union and Germany seemed only a matter of time, countries like France and Britain were hesitant to use force, preferring to use diplomacy to curb Hitler's plans for conquest. By 1939, though, Stalin knew he could not rely on France or Britain when Hitler attacked. They did not promise a significant number of troops and were afraid Stalin would not be a good ally during war. So, Stalin switched tactics, ending the Soviet Union's talks with France and Britain and entering into discussion with Germany. They signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Non-Aggression Pact in 1939, promising not to go to war with each other for 10 years. This pact did not save the Soviet Union from World War II. When the Red Army struggled to gain territory in Finland during the winter of 1939 into 1940, Hitler knew the Soviet Union's army was not as strong as it used to be. Stalin's purges may have secured his political power, but it left the military and the country vulnerable to attack. They were able to turn back Hitler's army during World War II, but there was a significant loss of life. Historians estimate about 27 million Soviet Union citizens died during World War II. Once the war was over, Stalin was determined to continue spreading communism. But the other Allied powers were leery, leading to the Cold War as Western Europe and the Soviet Union split Germany between them. The Cold War eventually spread globally, but Stalin did not live to see it. After years of leading the Soviet Union in a tight-fisted dictatorship, Stalin's health began failing in the 1950s, and he died from a cerebral hemorrhage on March 5, 1953. How did Stalin's dictatorship affect the USSR after his death? Like his predecessor, Lenin, Stalin's death caused a power struggle to erupt in the Soviet Union's government. Stalin had already disposed of all potential rivals, leaving only his followers to resettle the Soviet Union without him. At first, they attempted to divide Stalin's various titles and use group leadership, but this did not last long. Lavrentiy Beria, the leader of the Soviet Secret Service, was the first to challenge this cooperative form of government. He wanted to improve diplomatic relations with the United States and allow Germany to reunite. The other party members were intimidated by his connection to the Secret Service and disliked his plan to abandon the Cold War. They arrested him for treason in 1953, executing him at the end of the year. Beria's death did not stop the political infighting. Soon, Nikita Khrushchev took over. He was the first secretary of the Communist Party, and he officially took over the power of the government in 1958, although he had held it unofficially for a few years before then. Khrushchev had been a devoted follower of Stalin, but as he gained power, he criticized Stalin's actions during his dictatorship and tried to do away with Stalin's cult of personality. Khrushchev's rule was generally defined by relaxing international tension and improving domestic living conditions. He focused on food production and affordable housing, although his food production plans were not always successful. However, his reign is also marked by the space race and by building the Berlin Wall. These international incidents propelled the Cold War onwards. Even his internal improvements were not always popular, and he was overthrown in 1964 and replaced by Leonid Ilyich Brezhnev. With Brezhnev's reign came more stability. Stalinist terror fell into the past, allowing Brezhnev to lead the USSR into its golden era. Sadly, the damage Stalin inflicted on the Soviet Union cannot be ignored or healed quickly. Losing millions of people to war, famine, political assassinations, and labor camps took a toll on the country. While Stalin was dedicated to his communist ideologies, he did not listen to the people's voice. They opposed being forced onto communal farms and losing their traditional ways of life. Stalin's dictatorship reminds us of the dangers of power, especially in the hands of a visionary who can use that power to become a dictator. Russia is still recovering from Stalin's reign, and it is unlikely he will soon be forgotten in the pages of history. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about Joseph Stalin, check out our book, Russian History, a captivating guide to the history of Russia, including events such as the Mongol invasion, the Napoleonic invasion, reforms of Peter the Great, and the fall of the Soviet Union, and more. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.